Hello.
Hello. It is so
How's it
good.
going?
It's very good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to be vertical,
Yes.
out of bed.
You guys, anybody who's listening, AK got hit by the COVID bug, and unfortunately,
We
AK's in
managed to
the
avoid
house.
it for
Like,
three
oh,
plus years, but we knew once our littlest started going to kindy, like
that's a
it was just
time.
gonna get us eventually. Yeah. So yeah, it's been rough. My brain is still not completely back online, but luckily we have had like, 5 vaccinations by this point and stuff. So it's like could have been hit us way worse.
Yeah,
So
I'm just
we're just
glad to
still
see
a
you.
little bit tired and our brains are a bit loopy, but we're getting there.
So yeah, we'll get through this today. If you need to lay down for a minute, you just
People watching on YouTube just see me slowly like
take the microphone with you and be like, I'll just be on the floor.
yeah,
All
we'll just
right.
lie here together.
But we get to be here today with our community on the podcast.
Yes, hello all.
And we're talking more about community because May is our community theme. And
Mhm.
today's episode is all about once you've put your feelers out and you've started to bring people into your author universe, into your reader groups, into your world, like what do you do to keep them there? Because that's a spot where I think people, they'll go gung-ho and get people and be able to rally and get these groups of people, but then you get them. And I've been guilty of this, even like with an art team, just going, all right, I've got all these people now.
Yeah.
What do I do?
Yeah. And then it's like you kind of usually go one of two ways where you're either it'll stress me out and so then I don't engage enough with them and so then people don't want to hang around because there's nothing happening in that group, or I go too hard and I'm just like all up in there all the time with stuff and it's just like it's too intense, and it's just like finding that balance of, how do you make the being in that group or that space or even just like on your newsletter or wherever people may be gathering, how do you make it valuable for them and keep them interested in staying without overdoing it too? Because I've definitely been
Yes.
guilty of just kind of giving more than I have the energy to give in desperation of like keeping people there instead of being
Yes.
okay with like, especially with things like Patreon, where you're just like, and then I'll do this and this and this. And there's this like urge to do more, but actually it's not the amount of things. Usually it's more just like the amount of contact that I think people are more looking for. And so I've gone back and made it more clear, like at this tier, this is kind of like how often you'll hear from me, and at this, if you want to talk day to day, come join at this tier where you can join my Discord. And so there's conversations happening in there every day.
Yeah.
Uh, so I think one of the ways of like keeping people in spaces is making sure that you're like delivering on what you're promising to them and don't overpromise, you know.
Exactly. Because it is when you start to put together like Patreon, especially, and I can say this because I am so guilty of it as I'm like putting my subscription thing together. Because I want, like you said, I start to go give them more. Like, oh, I can do this. Oh, a novella
Yeah.
behind the scenes. Let's do some
Yeah.
character interviews. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do that. And it's like, actually, no, Anne.
Yeah.
Slow down. And I love
Weekly
that
updates
idea.
and all of these things and like,
Yeah.
and sometimes
Ooh.
it's like they don't all have to be a brand new story. It could just be like a sneak peek or a little update or a title reveal or like just these little smaller things that are easier to parse out
Yeah.
than big things constantly. But also just making people feel special can be like a huge part of keeping people in spaces, even when you're not like giving them anything, but just like making them know how appreciated they are. There's things that people do to feel more united in community in the same way you would on like a team or something. Like you might have a name for your readers. You might have like a saying or a tagline or a logo or some sort of emoji symbols that are associated with that group of people. Like all of those things kind of knit people together more
Yeah.
closely,
Yeah.
you know? And then like another thing that I've been doing recently too is looking at like, you know, making people moderators and things in like the Discord group and like in different places, like giving people roles and giving them, you know, like more to do in those things makes them feel
Yeah.
like quite valued. And I mean, I really appreciate it too. So it's kind of like a win-win in that way. Um, so like, yeah, having all of those things, I feel like, you know, you think about all the groups that you'd like to be in. What is it about belonging in those spaces that makes it valuable to you to be in them, you
Yeah.
know? Like
Yeah.
there's a culture to it. There's a energy that you need to kind of like pin down in
Yeah.
order for people to feel like this is a part of like who they are, you know, what they like. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it is that, like, and I love that uniting everybody, like, threading them together with, like, emojis or getting it's that common bond that
Mhm.
people attach when they can find relatable things with each other, and with us. That's just there's the gold. It is the gold, and yeah, it can be my mind just starts swirling around this because this is where I am right now. I'm looking at the community I've been building for the last couple of years, and one of the big steps I took this week, um, I have always offered a free book in my newsletters, and I'm only gonna start doing the free book now once a month, the first week of each month, as well as if I can find another one that I'm really digging, then I'm gonna pop it into a special feature newsletter that I've added in, but only for the sake of it's become another thing to do at the moment. And I would rather be working on something else of value that I can bring to my readers than just going, oh, let me find a free book real quick. Let's see who's got a free book that's up there. And then people get free books, free books, free books, free books. I also don't want people there just for the free books. I want people there that are going to be going, oh, yeah, yeah, we wanna, like, vote on the name of a character. We wanna do this, or we wanna do that, because those are the types of things I wanna get people in a subscription area to be like, "Hey, let's, vote on this title, vote on this, like, help me make these decisions so we can all do it together." Because I find that fun. Like,
Yeah.
I love doing that stuff.
Interactive and getting people excited about, you know, all of the things and kind of teasing what's coming up
Yeah.
um and making sure that they know that it's because of them that these things are happening, you know, like it's because of them showing up in your Patreon or in your reader group that you wrote this special thing or you made this like commissioned this special art or whatever it may be. It's like it's because they wanted to see it.
Yeah.
You know, so it's that kind of like encouraging people to keep using their voice in that space, you know.
Yes, yes. And finding ways to take something to everyone as well. I think if you're writing, like for me, I've got I have chick lit readers. I also have these sweet rom-com ones. And so I've been struggling like with what to do for each because each group similar threading, but very different, like who I attract
Mhm.
into each book, into each genre. So it's like giving yourself permission to lean in and ask, what do you guys want? What do
Mhm.
you want? I've been doing a lot of that in my newsletter, going to the community and saying, what do you want? And last week we gave them a survey asking for more, like, what do you want? Because I want to give you certain things. And I'm listening to them and putting that into action over the next few months.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
I think that's so valuable. Like I feel like I need to do it even more often. Like every year towards the end of the year, I ask like my Patreon and stuff, like, what do we want to do next year? Like what are the benefits we want? What are the things we want to change? Like what are you looking for more of or less of or
smart.
whatever? But doing that in all the different places, I think is a good idea. Like I never even thought of like asking my newsletter, like, what do you want to read more of? Like there's things that I've added in just to like see how they go. And then I look back at the newsletter and see how many people clicked on it. And if it's like consistently very low, I'm like, maybe I should cut this
Yeah.
section out. Like I have a section in my newsletter that's book bargains, like discount books,
Yeah.
but it gets very few clicks. And
Mm,
I feel like it's probably just not even necessary to have in there at this point. Like, I don't think that it's adding value to the people who are subscribed.
Yeah.
So, it's like things like that, constantly like testing, evaluating, being willing to like drop the things that aren't working. Like maybe you've promised like I'm going to do this every week or whatever, and it might not be something that anybody really is engaging with or even cares about, and you're putting
Yeah.
a lot of effort into delivering something that nobody even wants. And I
Yeah.
feel like we do that all the time, and then we get stuck in this hole of delivering things that people aren't looking for.
I feel like that actually comes back to something you and I talked about with listening to people. And people think, like, if I listen to you and try to drop in some of the things that you do with my newsletter subscribers, they'll be like, what? This is so different. And just vice versa. If I jumped into yours and like you tried some of my tactics, it's going to be different because of how we primed our people and what we do in our communities with them and how they know
Yeah.
us. And I think people hear that, and I put my hand up because I know I've been guilty of that in the past when I was trying to like wade through newsletter territory of like asking people,
Mhm.
what do you do? What do you do? And it wasn't until I took my own reins last year and then up the ante. I'm not going to just send out one newsletter a month. I'm going balls to the wall. We're going one a week. That was so scary to do. And now I love doing it. I'm like, I really get into doing it. And I saw, for me, my subscribers really like it. And I do have people on there that they want it every week. But yeah, it's how you prime your people and what you do and finding it's bring it back to TikTok. Get in there and experiment and have fun with it because you just don't know what's like throw the spaghetti at the wall. You don't know what's going to stick until you try it.
Yeah, always like dropping things and leaning more into other things. I feel like that's just like the consistently thing that you have to do as an author is like be constantly A/B testing and like, seeing what's working, leaning into it more, seeing if it's still working, like um but yeah, having all those ideas, I feel like are a good starting place of like ways to keep people in your reader spaces, but like asking them is hugely helpful too. Although sometimes people say they want something and then they don't really, so it's like ask them, but then test it out. And if it's not working, let it go.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I do think that there's like kind of a special talent some people have for, pulling people together and kind of creating groups and spaces and this kind of sense of community and team building and all of that sort of stuff. And I do think that like the really successful ones are ones where people feel attached to it as like part of like their identity in the same way that they do being like a bookworm or a romance lover or a whatever it may be. It's like I'm part of this reader group. I'm one of these things. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
and building friendships and connections between those people, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I've had moments of when I see people in like my art team or my launch and street teams or wherever I've got my little communities in their spots. And when they start talking to each other, like in my post or whatever, within that direct message, it's very exciting. I'm like, look what I did. You guys chatting now. I love it.
But yeah, I'd love to hear like what other people do
Yeah.
for their reader groups and their communities, and like what are some of the things they do to keep people wanting to like come back, keep opening that newsletter every month, or keep, showing up in that Facebook group or Discord group or whatever it may be. So I'd be
Yeah.
interested to know what some people's tactics are.
Yeah, tell us in the comments or send us, DM us, send us an email, get in touch and tell us what you want to know.
Yes.
And thanks so
We'll
much.
talk to you next week.
Bye, guys.